Hey everyone, I'm your host Brian, and we're back at the All Music Matters in That podcast. And I got my special guest today, Neil Yakopin, friend of mine
How's
from
it going?
college.
Yeah. Yeah, we went to the same college. It's pretty cool, man.
Yep, and also a fellow drummer too. Neil, how you doing today?
I'm good, man. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. I guess you had some traffic trying to come home and all that.
Yeah, it was kind of bad. But
Really,
I'm home. I'm happy.
looks like you've been
Yeah.
traveling around a good bit. I guess where were you? Where were you traveling recently?
This weekend was actually a late Christmas gift. My sister got us tickets to go to, it was the Rhythm Discovery in Indiana. So it's just basically a drum museum. It's pretty cool.
Oh, really? Was that what you
Yeah.
posted on social media with that big drum
I
set and
did.
everything?
Yeah. There was a bunch of drum sets that were on loan from different professional drummers. So it was a real cool experience, man. I got to see Buddy Rich's kit, Gene Krupa's, who else? Keo Stroud's, Aaron Spear. So there was like some really real cool stuff there. For
Oh,
sure.
sweet. All right, so just got some questions for you, and you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. So I think the first thing I do want to ask is, what'd you do like after college? Because was it Mr. Ola's class in finance and everything?
Yeah.
Are we in Bacini or any of the other ones?
Yeah, we definitely had Ola's class together and Bacini's, I think, accounting. I remember that. But after college, I got into health insurance, which is definitely not a music path at all, but it seemed like the right move at the time. And financially, it was like, okay, this makes sense. But, after a few years, the passion for drumming was still there. And I knew I was like, I want to do something related to drumming. So I started, after maybe 3 or 4 years, shifting my focus more towards music. But I had always played. Like I never had stopped playing either. It was, even when I was in insurance, I was still practicing and playing and things like that. Just not 100%.
It was more of a hobby at the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's how it was for me too. Like, just a brief story. Like, I got into drumming basically through video games. I was playing the Rock Band, and they had like the little pads and
Okay.
everything.
Yeah.
So I always laugh, and I actually did a YouTube video on that one where I talked about that story. And I always want to just say like, see, video games were good for something.
Right. There you go.
I
I used to
guess.
play that Rock Band too. I remember they had like a foot pedal and they had the four. It was like almost like an octagon. It had like the four different pads.
Yeah.
And I remember, but yeah, that was fun. I had many a good times on that.
Well, when I got to three, they started putting in the cymbals. They had the hi hat, and then the one acted as a ride, but also as a splash for the hi hat. Then the
Okay.
green was more of the traditional crash cymbal.
Okay. Yeah. So they
So,
upgraded.
but
But
what got you into drumming? Did you start from a young age, or did you like just start like recently?
I started when I was in seventh grade. That's when I got serious. When I was real young, my dad obviously my dad was a drummer, so that had a lot to do with it. But I remember growing up, I would see him play, and then I'd noodle around on the kit, but nothing really serious. I'd get on there and bang around like a kid would do. Just hitting things, making noise. But there was no real drumming happening.
The pots and
But
pans.
seventh grade, yeah, yeah. But in seventh grade, my dad got a new drum set for Christmas. It was a Pearl Masters custom. Really nice kit. Brought it home. It was the two up tops. So it was four toms, snare, kick drum. He got the double bass. He got the cymbal. So, as a kid, you're looking at it just like, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. There's all these things I can hit. I can make all these noises. And so I sat down, and obviously, you probably remember the first time you sat down behind a kid. It was terrible. You don't know what you're doing. You don't even know where to start. There's no good starting point. So he kind of coached me through. He's like, all right, this is a hi hat. Here's what you're gonna do with this. And slowly but surely, I just started taking an interest. And then that was also the same time that YouTube kind of had its prevalence, and I learned a ton through that. A bunch of lessons on YouTube, watching drummers that I still think of as some of my favorite drummers. And then slowly but surely, just adding tools to the toolkit.
Actually, it was always funny with me because mine wasn't like a. My dad was more like a bass player, so I pretty much had no one in my family that was mainly a drummer. So
Okay.
it was really through Rock Band, and that's how I really learned everything. Like, this is snare, and like it was also like how to keep the beat too. So I actually kind of learned music theory through it too. And then
Yeah.
eventually it was just like, I use a Roland. I don't know what kind of brand do you use for your drums?
So my acoustic drums, I do have an electric kit that I use for certain things. It's an Elisa, so it's nothing special.
Hmm.
But for my acoustic drums that I use, I have a few sets. The one that I use mainly is a Thomas Star Classic, Birchwood Benga.
Hmm.
So it's a 10-inch, a 12-inch, and then a 16-inch. But it's birch, so it's a little punchier. It's got a little more attack. And then I also have a maple kit, which is going back to that story of when I first started drumming. That Pearl Masters kit was gifted to me by my father. He's got plenty of drum sets now. Because he's a good working man. He's obviously got a little more funds than a younger person, but he gifted that kit to me. So the maple kit is just almost the antithesis of that birch kit, right? It's a little warmer, a little bit more resonant. So I have a nice blend between those two kits.
I see. Mine was actually we started off pretty small for the Roland that I had. It really wasn't like all connected. It didn't look like a drum set at all. The one I have now, the TD25, looks a bit more legit now. So,
Yeah.
Are you now a professional musician, or are you kind of more like a freelancer?
I guess by technicality, professional, because I guess if you get paid to do it, they consider you a professional. Right now, the guy that I've been playing with a lot, his name's Drew Green. We did a fall tour with him and Mitchell Tenpenny this fall, so they're more in the country scene. But I still play with other people if they hire me. So it's not like I'm locked into one set gig. So at the end of the day, if you were to call me and say, hey, I need drums for a certain project, I'd be happy to, work with that person. I'm not exclusive with anyone, but I did play the majority of my shows with Drew last year.
Oh, really? Is he one of the big music stars, or like who's like have you played like any other music stars?
I've gotten to open for some pretty fun people. We did an opening for Miranda Lambert when I played with a guy named Heath Sanders. So that was, and these are mainly people in the country music scene.
Yeah.
Miranda Lambert was one. We did Justin Moore. When I played with Roman Alexander, we did a Sam Hunt show. So that was pretty fun. We've done Jake Owen, John Party, and then obviously Mitchell Tenpenny. We did a lot of dates with them last year. And there's some other people along the way, but I kind of, off the top of my head, I can't remember everyone. But it's been fun, man. It's been a real blessing for sure.
Yeah, like what sort of specific genre? Are you strictly more in the country music, or do you sometimes branch out to some of the rock guys?
I think growing up, like I always gravitated towards more rock. I think that was more the style I liked to play. As I got older and I moved to Nashville, obviously there's rock here, there's pop. There's jazz, there's all kinds of music, so it's not exclusively country, but it seems that, if you're looking to get work, there's a lot more country gigs than there are rock gigs. So I think just by virtue of being in the business side of it, I've really tried to perfect my country chops. So, that I can actually get hired by country acts. But, if you were to just look at my Spotify and see who I listen to, it would be a real weird mixed bag of, rock. I liked a lot of like punk rock when I was younger. And then I've gone through phases of like 70s, 80s rock into more modern rock. And then I've also liked bands like the 1975, which are more like indie, like Patrick Droney, which is more like a modern blues. So I'm all over the place when it comes to music. I'll like anything as long as it's good,
Yeah, they do say like branch out. Make sure you like incorporate all the different genres into your music style, because not only does it let you be able to like play any sort of specific genre, but I guess you can build it into your own. And then if you join a band, you can just build it in. They'll be like, oh, what's that? And then, hey, it works. It actually makes pretty good sound. I get more into the metal side of things, and I do it more for the workout, if anything. But,
yeah, the double bass workout, man, that's for sure.
Well, not just that, it's also doing the blast beats, too. I was messing with one of the metal bands. Napalm Death was one of them.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, that was definitely a good workout, too. So if you're looking for one, I recommend just doing that as the workout routine, in case you can't get to the gym.
Well, the other good thing about a genre like that is it's going to really force you to become a very good technical drummer, because to pull off some of that stuff, you can't really have any weaknesses in your technique, So there's advantages to learning all styles of music, and that one especially, your technique is going to be flawless.
Yeah,
You
I
know?
think I think when I was seeing like some of the stories, like some of those metal drummers were talking about, they're like saying like I'm like in pain. I like being brutalized. It builds my self esteem or stuff like that. Uh,
Yeah.
I guess when you go through shows, do you feel any tightness afterwards, like sore the next day? Anything? I know the adrenaline kicks in and everything, but
With shows, not as much because they usually are shorter, so 30 to 45 minutes. Sometimes a long practice session. If I have to learn a few songs, maybe let's say like 8 to 10 songs, and I really want to learn them well, I may sit down and work on them for a couple hours. And after that, sometimes I will be like, "Ooh, I got a little sore" or something like. But usually with shows, because I have everything pretty mapped out in terms of what I'm going to play, and it's only for 30, 45 minutes. And I will say, definitely in the last year, I've been very good about warming up properly. I feel like that helps a lot. Because you played sports, a lot of that stuff, the soreness and everything comes from, you just ran out onto the field and you did 10 sprints without actually loosening up or doing any plyos or anything like that. Same thing with drumming. It's, I'll spend not a lot of time, maybe 10 minutes on the practice pad just to get my hands loose, and then a 30-minute show or 45-minute show, and I feel fine the next day, typically.
really,
A lot of water, drink some water, make sure I eat good, try to get some sleep. And yeah,
a lot of
usually
bananas.
yeah, a lot of bananas, you know.
I think there was one story. One of the metal drummers, Pete Sandoval, they actually had to feed him a banana while he was sitting down playing his drums during a live show because I guess he was in so much pain because he was the grandfather of the blast beat, Pete
Yeah.
Sandoval, and
hmm
I don't know if that story's true, but it does make for an interesting little article, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and 45 minutes of blast beats is a lot different than 45 minutes of playing country music. I can tell you that. My genre is a lot less, physically demanding than, a metal, a full-blown metal show, which would be a lot of work.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a lot of work.
I actually did see it in some of the videos. It looked like you were really having a blast too. You're also able to, when you feel the beat, and everything, you're just able to like move your head all around all over the place and all that stuff. I know. I
Yeah,
got
you get spots where you can cut loose for sure.
there was that too. And you know what? I didn't actually tell you this, and I should have mentioned it sooner. I was actually a cello player for about 9 years during the early years of my life, through like third grade up until the end of high
Really?
school. I was, yeah. And there would be times when we got the beat right and we were just going real well in concert. I was just feeling it and kind of moving my head all around, all over the place and everything. And I
It's
was
the
like,
rock, you got to let it out.
there was that, and we actually did do a couple covers of rock. We actually did Bohemian Rhapsody by Queen, Carry On
Okay.
Wayward Son from Kansas. What was the other one?
Nice.
Oh yeah, Stairway to Heaven, Led Zeppelin.
Did you guys do the full Bohemian Rhapsody, the full version, intro and everything?
Uh, no, I think it was. I think these were all like the shortened versions. I know for Stairway to Heaven, it was the shortened version.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's cool stuff.
I do miss those times, and that was perhaps the one thing I did like about Waynesburg. They did not have an orchestra or any sort of like cello program.
No, and that was the only downside is like musically, and I really try to get plugged in. I did take one private lessons there for a semester, and it was tough because I was busy with class and baseball. So I just remember it being difficult to do all three.
Yeah.
But, still practice in my room on my practice pad, and just, that's all you could really do in college too, because I can't have a full drum set. I probably could have done what you did if you had if you have an electronic drum set, you could probably get away with that in a dorm. But even that, sometimes people hear the clicking of the pedal
Yeah.
under, and it's like, depends on who your neighbors are. If you got good ones, they might let you slide.
Yeah, they would just have to blast the TV next door or
Yeah,
one of the headphones to do whatever they're doing on their computers.
exactly.
Did you ever play in that church at up on Waynesburg when they were done building it? Because I know they had a
I
drum set in a couple times.
I grew up playing in church actually. So when I was real young, grew up in a Presbyterian church. That's kind of like where we were raised at. And I played in that, and that was a different because if you've been to a Presbyterian church, it's very old school, right? So it's
Yeah.
typically hymns and a choir. So the idea of like having a drum set in there was very new to a lot of those people. And I was so young, I didn't know anything about volume control or bringing brushes. So I'm just banging on them as loud as I can, not really thinking about anything else. So that was probably not a great fit. And then after college, I actually played at a church in Cranberry called Northbridge Community Church. And I played there for about a year and a half, and I learned a lot playing there. I learned they use a software called Ableton, which is like a live production software that a lot of bands down here use as well. And that was my first introduction to that software. So I got familiar with it, and I think that was a huge help for me coming down to Nashville because they'll ask you like, "Hey, can you run Ableton? Do you know how to do it?" And playing in church for a year and a half and building those sessions and working with those guys, it was invaluable to the transition to Nashville.
Do you still use Ableton, or do you branch out to some of the other ones? Because I know they always say Pro Tools is the industry standard. I use
Yeah,
Logic, and I like Logic a lot because it was one, it was cheap, and two, since I have an Apple computer, it was easy just to put on there, and then it also
yeah.
came with like a couple other presets. I guess, do you still use Ableton, or do you kind of branch out to any other ones?
That's a great question. So you're right on the industry standard. Now it's going to be for recording too. So like most of the sessions down here. So if you're an artist and you're going in to record your song, almost all of them are going to be on Pro Tools. Although I see Logic a lot because there's a lot of people that are big Mac fans, and they're in the same boat that you, right? They had Logic as a free program. They got used to it and they never switched. So Logic and Pro Tools are definitely the most commonly ones that I see. But for what I use Ableton for is I use it for live performances. So I use it for, they call it playback. So in a situation where, let's say, you have 4 or 5 piece band, but you don't have a keys player, you have Ableton and you run your software and build your show so that all your songs are organized, they're time coded to the lights, they're synced up so that, at any moment, if you're in a big chorus of a song, obviously the lights will match that because they're MIDI mapped. But it also gives you the ability to put in there a keys part if you don't have a keys player. So that's what they use mainly for live playback. But for recording, you're right. Studio or Pro Tools and Logic are going to be the most common. I'm a weirdo though. I use Studio One. A lot of people don't use that, but in my first interface that I ever got, it came free with it. So I just learned how to use with that program and never really switched. Always kind of used that.
Is that what you use for your drum covers too? I guess whenever you do.
Yeah, I use Studio One. Although I've thought about switching to Logic because I have a Mac laptop as well. I have a PC that I record on, but I love all of the Mac programs, and I feel like because Logic is so widely used down here, that would probably be the easiest transition for me to go to that over Pro Tools.
I thought the other one was because it came with Alchemy. That runway preset has like all the sounds you can use, and I guess you can make beautiful sounds from it. Any sort of like bells, keys, guitars, stuff like that.
I've heard great Logic too. I mean, so that's definitely not a bad program to use if you're using it.
I've used it for mine, in fact, but I do mine through MIDI, and I also picked up a Superior Drummer. Did you ever use something like that?
Oh yeah, I have the Steven Slate. I don't know. You probably have heard of the Steven Slate one too. So there's Superior Drummer. There's Addictive Drums makes a nice one, and then I got the Steven Slate. So like with my electronic drums, I like their software is pretty good. So I plug my MIDI cord right into my computer. It has the drum set pulled up. I just click on a drum set, pulls up all the nice sounds. I can swap them in and out and everything. So that's pretty cool.
Is that the Contact one, or is that a different one?
It might be Contact. I think it is.
I thought so too. I know I've seen a couple other drummers when I was trying to study it.
Yeah.
I think some of them use that too, but I think that was more for the cymbals or
yeah,
for something, because I know some of the things that come in like Superior Drummer, they don't sound the greatest, so you want to use like the legit one and record those and do something like that. I've actually heard Ableton was like more for the hip hop guys. I think that's what most of them use. I don't know. Did you do anything with like hip hop yet? Did they use it in there?
So with Ableton, I don't really ever make music and or record in Ableton just because it doesn't seem like it has the easiest interface for that aspect.
Hmm.
Like I prefer Studio One, I prefer Pro Tools or Logic. I think Logic's a really good program for recording and doing stuff like that, music making. The only thing I really use Ableton for is playback, and it's more just because on the playback side of it, it's like the industry standard. So, if you're getting called for a gig and they are running like a playback software, I've only seen Ableton. I think there's a way to use Pro Tools, but most guys are going to be using Ableton on that aspect.
I guess going back to your shows, when you get set up for a gig, is it strictly you that's setting up everything, or do you have like a roadie?
Now it's me. Yeah, so I am my own drum tech, which is, yeah, hopefully it's someday, hopefully we continue to grow and there will be a day where, I have somebody that I trust really well that can set up my kit and, do a great job. But as of now, just obviously budgetary concerns is, I am the official drum tech of me. So I set it up.
Me, myself, and I, as we would say.
Me, myself, and I. Yeah, I get to lug them in and lug them out and clean them, make sure they're in tune and change the heads and all that good stuff.
Did you ever play for like a cover band? Because one of the recent things I joined was called Band Mix, and
Yeah.
that's for musicians. If you're looking for anyone in and around your area, so in and around my neck of the woods, I had actually joined a cover band briefly until unfortunately, they moved on with somebody else. But I joined for a couple of jam sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever play or do anything with like a cover band, anything like that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've played in a few. There's a few in Pittsburgh. I played for, my first band was Justin Favis. We were a cover band / artist band. So we had some artist songs as well as cover songs. I played in another cover band called Walk of Shame. It was like a wedding band / corporate band. So when we were a wedding band, we were Walk of Love. When we were just, doing the bar gig, we were Walk of Shame. So that was for a while. I played for them maybe for 6 to 8 months. I played for Frank Vieira, who has like an artist thing as well. So he does a lot of original music, but he also does some covers, country covers, things like that. So yeah, I played in down Broadway too, like down here in Nashville. Broadway, there's a ton of cover bands. People are always looking for a drummer, to help sub in, help out with that kind of work. There's a lot of need for it, but it's great practice, man. Like I it can be tough sometimes because the hours can be difficult. If you're doing like a 9 to 1 show or something like that, it can be pretty grueling. But you're gonna get great experience, and I will always, it'll definitely be one of those things where I look back, I'm like, I'm glad I did it. It was tough at the time, but it was super helpful. Some of them paid pretty well, was, depending on which ones you're with. So they're good. They're definitely an important part.
Mine, the one that I joined, it was a 90s alternative music. So they were doing like Smashing Pumpkins, the Racketeurs.
Yeah.
And I think there was one Block Party. And I know there was those ones. They had a long list. And I guess they were adding on more and more day by day. That was actually the first time in a while that I actually played on an acoustic set. Because it was in the guy's basement. But unfortunately, he didn't have like the little, whatever you want to call them, that keeps the cymbals down.
Oh, cymbal felts and the holders,
Felts,
yeah.
So they were moving all over the place. They're like spinning. I'm just trying to have a fun time and everything. They're spinning all over the place. I'm like, this thing's going to fall off here at any point. The same thing with the hi-hat too wasn't the greatest either. I'm like, it looked like there was like a little chew mark in it or something. So I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. I think I might have to get a new set and everything.
I feel like sometimes, and you'll probably run into this too, where if you play a gig, they'll say like, hey, we have a house kit. And you'll get down there and you'll expect it to be something like your kit. And you get there and the heads are dented in. The crashes look like, maybe like an 8-year-old just took a hammer and just, smashed them into pieces. They're all like bent and warped. The hardware is moving around. You'll have this situation. So it's good that you adapted and made the best of it.
Oh, yeah. Who would you say, which drummer has been like the biggest influence on you? Like Neil Peart, any of the old school guys?
Yeah, we were just talking about it this weekend, actually. Obviously, they're the legends like Steve Gadd and Dave Weckl and like Vinny Caliuta, and some of those guys are. I still watch their videos today, but I remember when I was young, I watched a lot of Steve Gadd videos. Because I was so fascinated with him because he was that drummer that was so musical, but also very technically good. And then I also went through a phase where I was really obsessed with speed. So I was really into just guys that were technically sound. So I remember, and I don't know if you know who Thomas Lang is, but he is, just kind of like a double bass slash, in terms of his hands, he's just a technical phenom. And I remember I went through a big phase of watching him. Achilles Priester, too, if you ever heard of him. He's a big metal drummer. So I remember I watched a lot of videos of those guys, too, growing up because I was just super enthralled with all that. But to one drummer to have a big impact, man, that's a good question. I would say it was more of culmination of a bunch of drummers, but if I had to put like a top three, it would probably be Steve Gadd, maybe Tony Royster Jr., and then let's see who else. Maybe Ash Schoen too, because he's more of like a musical drummer, so he's more of like a pocket guy. But I feel like I learned a lot from him.
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
I would say mine was kind of like a bit of a smaller group because my dad and me, we were more into like the classic rock guys. So
Yeah.
Neil Peart, Keith Moon. Let's see.
You like John Bonham too?
John Bonham from Zeppelin.
Yeah.
I got to him a little late, but yeah, when I heard him a couple times, I know No Quarter and I think Good Times, Bad Times. I think when he was like doing the triplets with the double bass, I was thinking like, wow, that is good.
Cool. Yeah.
And
Nice.
I feel bad. I wish I knew the drummer from Tool. That was also
Danny Carey, right?
Danny who?
Danny Carey, I believe.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I know I was playing No Quarter on drums with that one when they were doing a cover of the Zeppelin song. I know I was just having a blast, and I just absolutely loved the drums from that.
Yeah.
But if I wanted to give my top three, I'd say definitely Neil Peart for number one, then Keith Moon.
Oh, that's a good.
Well, I would say just because I think in Keith Moon's early days, I think he was kind of all over the place, but it still like kept the beat, and then he eventually got better. I think when he started not doing so much with drugs at the time, or something like that. But
Yeah.
I hope I pronounced his name right. But this one's a metal drummer, and I think he's the best one of all time. Is George Colias? I think that's how you pronounce him.
I know who you're talking about. Another speed freak, man. In terms of technical skill, he's one of the best.
Oh yeah,
his footwork is insane.
It's it was so weird when I was looking at it because he's moving it like back and forth too. But it's like I guess he's like pressing down on it too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's so good that it almost makes it look like I could just hop on and do it because he's so smooth and so easy with it that it almost I could do that. And you sit down and you're like, oh, I can't do this at all.
Yeah, like I think they said blast beating. It takes like years to like, get it right, and I feel like that's kind of bad too. I mean, I was even doing a drum cover with like one of the blast beats from Napalm Death. I think like I'm just gonna do this. I'm gonna try it. I'm gonna try to keep it as close as I can. I'm not gonna be perfect.
Yeah.
And, don't you hate that too when you get critics who say your playing's like copying somebody else or that sort of negative criticism? You're like, seriously, we're criticizing this. Do you get that too?
Yeah. Honestly, anytime, and I don't want to overgeneralize, but I feel like anytime anyone offers you criticism like that, it's coming from a weird spot, maybe like a not jealousy, but it's never really a very good spot. Anyone that's ever been helpful in my life in terms of criticism has always been very tactful and, been like, hey, like you do this really well, but, you should work on this, where, it's never like, oh, man, you just suck. Cause that's not helping anybody. That's not helping that person. That's not, that usually comes from a weird spot. But anytime, I've gotten criticism that's been helpful, it's usually been from someone I either trust really well or someone that has been tactful in how they do it. And they approach it in a way where you don't feel terrible after, if you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That makes,
especially when they're like anonymous, they have like barely no subscribers on their YouTube
channel. That's just a troll right there. They're just looking for attention. Yeah, that's never good.
Did you ever get in like a foreign language too? I swear I got one in Portuguese. I had to literally look it up.
Yeah,
And
I've had a couple where they've been critical, and it's like very bad English too. It's like broken English, like the punctuation's all messed up, and it's like the sentence. Like I know they're being hard on me, but it's like not very clear as to what they're saying.
they must
I've
have
had a
been.
few.
I don't know if it was
Yeah,
like meant to translate for him or something, but oh man.
probably.
Yeah. Uh, do you need any sort of like certificates or professional licenses in order to do the job that you do, or they just like call you and say like, "Hey, we need a drummer, man."
Yeah, honestly, the good thing about down here is there really is no certifications necessary. A resume, and I would say your resume is not even a printed one. It's more just word of mouth. I would say most of the gigs that I've gotten down here have been from people that I've played with before that say, "Oh yeah, like you're looking for a drummer. Like, why don't you give Neil a call? Like, you know, he'll show up on time. He's not a mean person. He's like easier to work with, and he'll learn your songs. So it's a pretty easy resume as long as you take the time to do a good job. But yeah, no accreditations necessary. At least I haven't run into any situation like that. I know the session guys, there's no accreditation necessary. Most of the live guys that I know that are even on bigger tours, no accreditation necessary. Now, some of them went to music schools like Belmont or Berkeley or something like that, but it's not a necessary thing. It's more just a nice little, hey, I did this. I can play these styles, da 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 da, and that could kind of help. But for the most part, they're not going to ask for any certificates or anything like that. So you're in the clear in that regard.
Outside of friends, if you really want to try like play drums for like this sort of project, do you have to like send some sort of resume or video stuff like that, or?
Yeah, I would say a big reason why I'm pretty up. I stay up to date on my social media. The way I look at my Instagram and my Facebook, because if you go through my Instagram or my Facebook, I really don't post a lot like personally, and it's not because I don't have things to say. I'm not a huge fan of social media, but I use it almost as like my business card. So when people go through, they can see how I play drums to a certain song. So if they're looking for a certain style, they can go through and go, oh, okay, like Neil plays this way when he plays on a country song, or he plays this way when he plays on this song. So it's almost like your virtual business card, if that makes sense. Because you don't really have business cards down here like you would in a formal business, environment where, if I was a sales associate, I might hand someone a business card with my email and phone number. But down here, it's like they'll look up your Instagram, check out your videos, and maybe give you a DM or a text or something like that. But yeah, that's how I roll with that, at least with social media. So
I was gonna say, I know Instagram can be a little weird at times because I
oh
guess
yeah,
when you post like some videos, you'll get these people say like, "Hey, we're gonna help build your base. So many X amount of followers. You just need to pay like this amount." I will say I did a little experiment with that last year just to see what it was like, and it did boost my followers. But then like you slowly start to see it like decrease whenever you don't post something. I guess did you
yeah.
try anything like that at first or no?
I've gotten some messages from some people that I know exactly what you're saying, where it's, will help, promote your posts and things like that. Usually the best kind of engagement that I found is I'll go through the search tab, so you can search, and I'll look up tabs that I like. So I'll go through drumming tabs, or, type in drummer as a hashtag, and I'll go through and just watch other drummers. And if I like one of their video, I'll like their video, click on their profile, maybe shoot them a follow. If I really like their stuff, sometimes I'll send them a message like, hey, like, I really like what you're doing, and just try to make friends with people on social media. And typically what they'll do is, they'll follow you back, and then sometimes they'll repost some of your stuff to theirs, and you'll get followers from their page and things like that. But yeah, I try to do it as organically as possible, just so I can foster those good relationships along the way. Because in the music business, I feel like everyone's just trying to help one another. If I know that I have a really good friend who's a drummer and I get called for a gig, but I can't do it because I'm busy with something else, I'm much more apt to use someone that I trust as a friend, and I know he's going to do a good job, than, just some random kid that's a good drummer that I don't really know.
Hmm.
Because at least I know if I send him on those gigs, like, I know he's a good guy. I know he's a good person. He's going to show up on time. He's going to be a good professional. He's easy to work with, and he's a good drummer. He's all of the above.
Did you do any like sort of collaborations with them, like something with like a YouTube video or any social media posts, or just goof around in general?
I've done some fun stuff with some guitar players. One of my buddies, Brendan, me and him have done a couple videos together. One of my other buddies from Pittsburgh, his name's Joey Catania. He's a guitar player. I've done some stuff with him as well. So mainly like guitar players. I'd like to maybe do a bass player soon. I think that would be fun to do, like a bass and drums cover. But I haven't done a drums and drums cover yet. So that would be a first for me if I were to do that.
Yeah, I'm always open. I got a light schedule.
Yeah, I was about to say, maybe we'll work something out and get that done. That would be fun.
Actually, we're supposed to do that bass and drum cover. I picked that song out. It was a Jesus Online by Bush.
Yeah.
And I guess you got busy at the time. I don't want to blame you for anything like that. And I can't blame you either. It was kind of shit too. But you remember David Bobby?
What's that?
You remember David Bobby from college?
I do, yeah. I do remember.
He was pretty upset when we couldn't do that. He just put a nice little message on there. It's like
yeah.
No.
Well, it's something that could still happen, though. It's not the end of the world.
I don't know. He overreacts, but it's kind of funny too.
That's amazing. That's fun.
Have you ever done like a street performing? And I ask because I was in Asheville, North Carolina last year with my parents for a little bit, and there were some street performers. Some of them like guitars or funky sort of string instruments.
Yeah.
Did you ever do something like that, or is that a little bit too risky down in Nashville?
Oh no, I don't think it would be overly risky. I haven't done anything like that, but I have a lot of respect for those guys. I mean, sometimes I see some talent down there. I'm like, I don't know why you're down here on the streets. You're better than most of the people that I know. So, I haven't done it personally, but I have a lot of respect for some of those guys because they're very, very talented. And to capture someone's attention for 10, 15 minutes on the street that you don't know with just a bucket and a pair of sticks is a pretty impressive thing to do. So definitely have a lot of respect, but I have not done any street performing.
I thought about it too. My dad was like, nope, that is way too risky. You'll probably lose that set that night before.
Yeah, exactly.
They do have something up here in Pennsylvania, but I thought it would be a little strange. I don't know, a little uncomfortable. I don't know. I think you have to like have a lot of like the musicians out and about. It can't just be like just you there. So
yeah, because then you probably just seem like an easy target, if it's just you.
yeah.
But I guess if you bring buckets, though, you can't. If someone stole a bucket, at least you wouldn't be out too much. So
I'll just go to Home Depot and get a new one.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. For $10, and you'd be in good shape.
So jumping to COVID now.
Yeah.
I guess how's Tennessee's COVID laws, or I guess any sort of mandates? Anything? Have they done anything like that? Or I guess
that's a good question. So for our fall tour last year, it was always dependent on the state that you were playing in and the venue's policies. So whatever those policies were, we just adhered to what they were. Typically, I would say almost 100% of the time it was proof of vaccination, or you would have to get obviously a test 2 to 3 days prior before the show to at least show that you didn't have COVID.
Oh.
If you had one of those, you could get into the show, and obviously the band was required to do so as well.
I was trying to think. 2020, I know that's when it all started. Were they pretty lenient, and then it got a little, I don't say stricter, but a little bit more rule enforced, if you know what I mean?
That's a good question. Yeah, I moved in 2020, so I was in that weird transitional period where I was down here. I moved in the summer of 2020. So I was down here, but I didn't really have my sea legs yet, so I was still just getting to know people. So I wasn't playing out too much, but I will say it was very shut down. Anytime Broadway is shut down, which is like the main strip down here in Nashville, that's usually like a good pulse for how the rest of the venues are doing. And they were pretty shut down at that time. So most places weren't even open for business, let alone shows. And then slowly, they started incorporating, hey, if you're vaxxed, you can come in and we'll do, and they were doing about half capacity shows. And so we did a lot of those half capacity shows as things started to come back a little bit.
Are they now starting to get a little bit full, or are they still like half capacity?
You know, I think there are still some regulations, but I think for the most part, if people are vaxxed and they have a proof of, a negative test result, they're kind of getting back to regular occupancy for the most part.
Well, I know. I also work in the restaurant industry, so I do 2 jobs now. I do mine at the bank, and now I do one at a little restaurant. It's a little local joint.
Yeah.
And I was actually having this talk last night with some of the other cooks, and they're saying, like, people want to get back out now. Do you see that now happening in Tennessee? Like,
Oh yeah.
bars are a lot more packed, kind of a reminiscent of like what 2019 used to look like.
Yeah, people were definitely getting back. I think there's I guess you start to miss what you don't have in a sense. So, because I like going to shows too, just as a spectator. I was at one last night. It was just a local cover band. We were in Indiana, watching a blues band, but it reminds you of how much you love live music, because I love watching live music. I love listening to music on nice headphones or in my car or on nice speakers, but there's very few things that can replace, the energy and just the overall, it's just a good time to watch a good band crush on stage.
Oh yeah.
You know how it is. It's just, it's very hard to explain unless you're there, but it's just a different energy. You get to see, how the show builds and certain crescendos, and, you can see when the band's really locking in, and that's, reciprocated by the audience and given back. And it's a really pretty beautiful thing. So, to be in the crowd again, it's fun. And I like going to shows, so I'm happy.
I guess, speaking of live shows, which one was your first concert in your life? First live
First
concert?
Wow, that's a good question. First concert was actually, I believe it was a Dave Matthews Band concert, which is, once again, going back to my musical style. It's all over the place. Like, people ask me my favorite genre. I'm like, I don't even know, because I listen to so many different types of music. But that was my first show, and I went with a couple of my buddies, and that's, because they're a great live band. I'm not even crazy about their records necessarily on their own, but they're a great jam band. They're great musicians. So I really got captivated by, their energy and how they groove on stage. And Carter Buford's one of my favorite drummers to this day. So I was pretty happy. And that was a good first live show to be at, for sure.
I was always trying to remember mine. I always remember the first one, my first metal concert, I will say.
Yeah.
It was in high school, and I was part of the German club. So we got a trip to go to Austria and Germany. I was in Salzburg, and we saw a poster for Job for a Cowboy and As I Lay Dying. And
yeah, As I Lay Dying. That was probably a good one.
you know what? Actually, I'll tell you that in a second. I went with a couple friends, and we had to make sure we had permission by the teacher. But that day, particularly, we had gotten in trouble because we were not in the correct spot to regroup in order to go back to our hotel. So we were worried we were not going to be able to go. So, but fortunately, and by good grace of God, she did allow us to go. And it was me and 2 other friends. And we saw the whole show for Job for a Cowboy. And we saw, I want to say 5 songs. I do remember 2 of them, 94 Hours and An Ocean Between Us. I can't remember some of the other ones, but I think it was 5 songs before we had to leave.
Okay.
And that was before they got into that. It was that whole drama, too, with Tim LaBassus, the singer. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that whole drama now.
He was conspiring to kill his wife. And
oh, wow.
Yeah,
it was pretty
it was pretty serious, yeah. And I honestly couldn't believe that happened because I was really hooked on them. I loved them too. They were one of my favorite bands at the time. Right. And it looks like he's back out now, and it looks like that band got back together. Looks like they're doing fine. They actually put out a new album and everything. But then there's also that criticism saying, like, it's all for the money then. Like,
right.
So I feel bad then. I think he is a changed man. I think they're trying to just get back to where they were. I guess, was there anything like, maybe not a guy conspiring to kill his wife, but was there any sort of story of a guy who's trying to get back into music as a way of redemption? Something like that?
Oh yeah, yeah, and I guess that's more, at least my personal belief in just life in general, because I think we've all made mistakes before, so that there's an element of grace that you kind of want to. It's the same thing if I were to do something that someone else viewed as wrong, like I would want that same type of, hey, we forgive you, we're going to give you a second chance if I'm genuine. Obviously, you can wear people thin if you continue to abuse that, but I think everyone's worthy of a second shot, because you would want a second shot if it were, done to you, or if you made a big blunder and you're a changed man, you spent years to, try to get, past that certain spot. I think, there's a soft spot in all of us where we want someone to do well after, a big mistake. And everyone loves a comeback story. All the best stories are good comeback stories. So,
We'll make a movie of it. There we go.
yeah. Yeah, so you got to give those people grace, or in certain situations, I think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. I don't understand the hate behind it. I think when you come out of there and you're trying to, because they actually did a video where it got all the bandmates together and looked like they were doing a little, I don't want to say intervention, because intervention sounds like it's more like people are trying to encourage you to get changed and stuff like that. But it was more
Yeah.
a get together. And it seemed like more of an apology and then trying to get some demons out, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I completely agree with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Down to the last couple questions for you, so I won't keep you too long. But uh, do you guys, you did say you were like in the state of Indiana. Do you guys tour anywhere else, or are you more strictly local, then like branch out every now and again?
Oh, so this fall we did a lot of different states. So we did Ohio, we did New York, we did Delaware. Oh, my phone's sad. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Delaware. We did Illinois. We did a lot of the eastern side, but we also did California. We did Bakersfield, California, which was really fun. I've done Salt Lake City, which was in Utah. So yeah, we definitely get around as much as we can. The only show we did in Nashville this year with Drew was the one at the Ryman. So other than that, it was kind of in different states. So it was a lot of fun travel.
All right.
Yeah.
I guess, which one, has there been like any sort of like funny stuff that's happened? Like somebody got sick, puked all over the place or something, or peed on a guitar set or something like that?
Yeah, I mean, we've had a lot of stuff. We've had some good, like some funny stories, and we've had some scary stories where maybe a really bad sound check where your electronic gear goes out minutes before the show, and it's like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? We don't have, we can't listen to our ear packs or anything, so now we don't know what each other's playing. That can be scary. And then we've had some funny moments where we've tried to drive our RV through like a drive-through to see if it maybe fits underneath the 10-foot thing, and only to find out that it's like literally like touching the very top of that. Yeah. So you can't do that. Then we have to walk through it or silly things like that. But man, to pinpoint one funny memory, I don't know. Nothing comes to my head as the funniest memory, but there's a lot of small things along the way that will always hold a very special place in my heart.
Do they involve alcohol?
Some of them, yes. Yeah. Although I must say, like, the band that I play with is pretty fit and pretty like health conscious, like most of the guys, so they are pretty conscious of that. We do drink and have a good time, but we're also kind of old in the sense that like if we have a string of 3 or 4 shows in a row, like we typically don't drink that first night, because you know how that is. That first night you drink, you're like, oh, have a good time, and the next morning you wake up, you're like, oh, I don't feel so good today. Then you drink a little bit that second night. By the 4th day you just feel like walking death, so we try to avoid that as much as possible. But we do have fun every now and then.
That's good too. COVID's been pretty tough too, so it's always good to have a lot of those funny memories.
Absolutely, man.
Did you have to stay confined in your home for a little while, or did they allow you to come out and wear a mask and all that stuff?
I did. Yeah, we had a brief period, and I did have COVID at one point in time. So obviously, I had to self quarantine for the 14 days. So that was pretty boring, pretty lonely time. I got sick pretty bad for about 3 days, I would say. And then, seemed to recover after that. But yeah, those 3 days were pretty brutal, and pretty rough. And it's just a long time to be by yourself, because I don't have any roommates or anything. So it's just me, you know. And then obviously I call my fiance, probably annoyed her a lot, you know, just calling her basically every day and trying to entertain myself because you start running out of things to do. And I drummed a lot, so that
Yeah.
I guess that's good.
Are you living with your fiance now, or are you guys still?
So when we get married, we will move in together, but that will be this winter. So as of now, we are still. She lives with her two sisters, and I live by myself. And then once we get married, we will become a little unit, and we'll move in together. It should be fun.
All right. I wish you the best of luck going forward, man.
Dude, thank you, man. I appreciate it.
All right, but we are down to the last question, and this has been a really good interview. So, for the future drummers out there, uh, what sort of advice or like any sort of lessons you could probably share with them from your experience with moving down there? Because it's obviously not easy, and I guess you had a little bit of a rocky path when you first
Yeah,
started off.
yeah,
Did it make you
yeah.
want to give up at first?
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I've had some definitely some ups and downs for sure. When I first moved to Nashville, obviously the whole COVID thing was happening, so it was really disheartening because you know you get down here and you're super excited to meet people and network, and I can't wait to get out and you know find people to play with. But I had signed my lease before COVID was even a thought. It was, you know, I had signed it about 4 months before anyone had even mentioned COVID, and I'm locked into a lease at that point, so I got to commit. And I get down here and it's just starting, and now all the bars are closing, and I'm like, holy smokes, you know, I'm 500 miles away from Pittsburgh right now, and all my friends and family, and I don't know anyone down here, so it was definitely disheartening at first. But good advice to a young drummer would be to reach out, you know, to, you know, obviously like anybody that listens to this, if you have, you know, if you follow me on Instagram, you can DM me and I will definitely message you back and do anything I can to help because, you know, all of us down here definitely have a soft spot for anybody that wants to pursue it and chase it. So if it's on your heart and you feel like, you know, I really want to pursue music, I would just say reach out to somebody else that's in a position that can help you, and they probably will. You know, because I did the same thing when I first moved down. I reached out to one of my buddies, Pete Wilson, and he hit me back and called me, and we talked for like an hour. And he just said, "Hey, you know, if you come down here, make sure you know how to do this or get better at this." Da da da. And he gave me a huge list of good ideas to work on and to practice and to put, you know, into my daily regimen. And as soon as I got down here, you know, we got coffee and hung out a few times, and then he helped me get the gig that I'm currently with Drew. You know, so yeah, I think people and relationships are huge help. You know, so to a young drummer, if it's in your heart and you really want to do it, you know, reach out to someone. You can obviously reach out to me or just anyone that you feel would be a good mentor, and get plugged in and continue to practice. And then once you get plugged in, I'm sure that person will help you get that gig that you're looking for, or at least one to help you eventually get the one that you're looking for at some point.
That's good to know. All right, Neil, thank you so much for coming on here. I know we wanted to try to
Yeah.
get this sooner. I guess you had a little conflict of schedule come up back in January there. I had actually
Yeah.
just came back from a aunt's party that day, so
It worked out well, I think.
it did work out. I was a little bummed at first. I was hoping, and I wasn't sure when you were going to be open again, but I really want to thank you so much for coming back on here.
Dude, it's a pleasure, man. I had a great time.
And this is the All Music Matters in That podcast. So it would be nice to actually interview anybody else, I guess, if you want to give them a shout out down there in Nashville, or if they want to come and hang out too, or anything like that. Do like one big interview, or I actually look forward to doing a collab at some point. Just trying to get my name out there too. I'm trying to work my way to that promised land too.
I love it, brother.
All right, Neil, I want to thank you so much again. All right, this is Brian Gribbin, and this was Neil Yakopin right here. I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, and Neil, stay tuned.
All right, see you, Brian.
All right, take care.